All right, it's Thursday here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting, all right there at Panther-Lair.com. And of course, message boards where you and hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans can get together all day, every day, and talk about Pitt sports. You're a Pitt fan, you like to talk about Pitt sports. What better outlet could you find than the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you go check it out if you are a Pitt fan. Of course, every day, Monday through Friday, we're right here with the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Just a way to get your day started. Whatever's going on in the world of Pitt sports, we're talking about it right here on the Morning Pitt, and just kind of give you the talking points for the day. It's just kind of a daily talk show. You know, if our Wednesday night live stream is like a call-in show, and there's no calls, you can't actually hear a voice, but you can post your comments and questions. We have a little chat screen over there. You can post your comments and questions. So it's like a call-in show. These Morning Pits, Monday through Friday, are these Morning Pit episodes are like a talk show. You know, just talk for 10, 15, 20 minutes, however long it takes, talk about whatever's going on in the world of Pitt sports. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And, you know, we had the live stream last night, the live Panther-Lair show right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And that was fun, as always. There was a lot to talk about. We were kind of, I don't want to say distracted, but sort of keeping an eye on the TV here in the offices at Panther-Lair.com, watching the final 8 minutes or so of the Virginia-Louisville game, because it was pretty close. It was a 2-point game at halftime. Louisville kept it within 4, 5, 6 points through the final 8 minutes, through the final 5 minutes. Virginia pulled out to, I think, about a 9-point lead, but Louisville was able to cut it back down. The game at Louisville. So the fans were like, I mean, whatever fans are actually at Louisville games these days, we're kind of into it. Having the number 7 team in the country on the ropes, but Virginia was able to survive and escape with a 3-point win. And we're not going to split hairs too much about Virginia only beating Louisville by 3. It's conference games. You're on the road. It's February. You're playing 30-some games. You're going to have some that end up being closer than they should, and you pretty much just escape happy that you got out with a win. And not worry too much about the margin of victory. I think Virginia's fine. They should feel comfortable about their position in the world of college basketball and in the ACC. You'd like to beat Louisville by more than 3, but a win is a win when it comes down to it. And we were keeping an eye on it, of course, because it's relevant to Pitt. It has a lot to do, and this is going to be the case for the next few weeks, that we're going to be scoreboard watching, not necessarily other teams around the country as it relates to the top 25 or the net rankings or the NCAA tournament resumes, but more the ACC, because there's a handful of teams at the top of the conference right now that I think are going to stay at the top of the conference, and they're going to be the teams Pitt has to compete with for those coveted seedings in the ACC tournament. That's really what this is all leading up to right now. You'd like to get the ACC regular season championship. To be the sole winner of the ACC regular season championship, if you're Pitt, you need to win out, and Virginia needs to lose a game. If Virginia and Pitt are both 12-3 right now. If they both win out, they're both going to finish 17-3, and they'll be co-champions. Pitt will have the number 1 seed in the ACC tournament, thanks to a tiebreaker from beating Virginia, but they'll be co-champions. Miami's 12-4, Clemson's 11-4, NC State is 10-6. All right, those are your top 5 teams right now. And really, there's a separation there between the 4-loss teams and the 6-loss teams, because after NC State, you've got Duke, Wake Forest, and Syracuse, all with 6 losses each. And that's kind of your, really, top half or so of the conference. That's about 8 teams. But you look at those top 4 that all have 3 or 4 losses: Virginia, Pitt, Miami, and Clemson. And they're all sort of vying to stay in that top 4 to get the coveted double bye in the ACC tournament. Not have to play a game until Thursday, only have to win 2 games to get into the ACC Tournament championship game. I mean, that's what this is really building toward. And right now, as it stands on Thursday, February 16th, 2023, all of those teams are looking up at Pitt. Pitt is the team they're all chasing. And we've had some conversations on the message boards about the ACC race and who's going to win and who controls their own destiny and this and that. And the reality is nobody controls their own destiny to be the sole outright ACC regular season champion. Like I said, if Pitt and Virginia both win out, they'll be co-champions. You know, if Miami wins out and that's the only game that Pitt loses, you know, and Virginia happens to lose 2 games or something like that, Miami and Pitt will be co-champions. You know, if Virginia loses 1 game, Miami wins out, and the Miami game's the only game Pitt loses, you'll have 3 co-champions. I don't even know what they do in that situation. It ultimately doesn't matter because I don't think that's going to happen. I think these things will sort of work themselves out. But nobody controls their own destiny when it comes to being the ACC regular season champion, outright sole champion. But there is one team that controls its own destiny when it comes to being the number 1 seed in the ACC tournament. And that's your University of Pittsburgh basketball Panthers. If they win out, they will be the number 1 seed. No one can beat them. Virginia can win out, but they'll lose the tiebreaker to Pitt. You know, Pitt winning out means Miami won't win out because they face each other in the regular season finale. And who else? Who's the other team? Clemson. What? They're 11-4 now. You know, if they win out and Pitt wins out, Pitt's got 3 losses. Clemson has 4. Even though Clemson would have a tiebreaker over Pitt if they end up with the same number of losses. I think as you start to rank goals and objectives and things you're shooting for from sort of small to big, you want to get in the top 4. You want to have that double bye. You want to be on the, you know, playing on Thursday in the ACC tournament. That's number 1, sort of the smallest goal. Number 2, you want to have the top seed. You want to be the number 1 seed in the ACC tournament. And then, you know, kind of number 3 and sort of right along with that, you want to win the ACC regular season championship. Hoisting a banner, whether it's for the ACC tournament or the ACC regular season championship, would be unbelievable for this program. And an unbelievable testament to how far the program came really in 1 year. And it really has. This is a pretty remarkable thing that I've sort of been thinking about lately. That this is really progress that was made in 1 year. You know, Jamarius Burton has been here for a little while. Nate Santos is a sophomore. Nike Sabandi's been here for a few years. A few years that included a number of derailments and delays, but he's been around for a few years. But really, this is all new guys. This is new guys making a big, big impact. Nelly Cummings, Blake Hinson, Greg Elliott, Federico, the Diaz-Graham twins. This is a 1 year development. And there's something to be said for building the program over the course of the last 4 years, and Jeff Capel continuing to build and you know, building things behind the scenes and improving facilities and just building up the overall foundation of the program and being able to recruit and all those kinds of things. But when it really comes down to it, this wasn't sort of a slow build since 2018. You know, this wasn't, you know, year by year, the 18-19 to 19-20 to 20-21 to 21-22, that you just saw it building and man, you could see this season coming. This was going to be the year. No, this was going to be another bad year and potentially the year that could get Jeff Capel fired. I mean, that was what the expectations were. That's what we were thinking before the season started. And, you know, certainly once Dior Johnson gets in trouble and John Hughley gets hurt and Will Jeffers is out and they start 1-3, this is it. This might be the worst season yet. But instead, you get a turnaround. You get the best season yet. And the best season since 2015-16. Best season since 2013-14. And headed toward the best season since 2010-11. You know, it's really just sort of this 1 year giant leap forward. And we'll talk, and believe me, we'll have so much time in the offseason, and I keep putting off this conversation because we'll have so much time in the offseason for it. We'll talk in the offseason about whether or not this 1 year of a giant leap can be sustained into 2 or 3 or 4 years of program-wide success. We'll discuss that. Believe me, you're not the only one thinking it. I've been thinking it a lot too. But as it relates to this team right now, picked to finish 14th in the ACC. None of us on the Panther-Lair staff picked them to win more than 18 games. And 18 was Houston Wilson had the high watermark. He picked them to go 18-13. They've already surpassed that. They've already set a new program record for ACC conference wins. They've already, clinched their first winning season in 7 years. They've already done all of these things. They've already passed so many benchmarks and so many hurdles and so many obstacles and barriers, and they've broken new ground so frequently over the last month and a half, really. To think about where they came from is just remarkable. And I did a Morning Pitt a week ago, 2 weeks ago. They all run together, where I talked about the likability of this team and the fact that they are, so many of these guys are on their second chances or third chances. Jamarius Burton is on his third school. Nike Sabandi is on his second school. Nelly Cummings is on his third school. Blake Hinson is on his third school. Greg Elliott's on his second school. Federico was a junior college player left on the heap when, West Virginia kind of sort of asked him to go away. Like the Diaz-Graham twins, where do they come from? It's, I don't want to say it's an island of misfit toys because I don't, that seems disrespectful, but these are guys who were not the, cream of the crop. You know what I mean? They weren't at the top of the pile. And yet they've all come together to be the team that right now everybody else in the conference is chasing. Virginia's got the pressure on them. If Virginia wants the number 1 seed in the ACC tournament, they have the pressure on them. And I know Virginia's schedule looks a little bit easier. Their most challenging games in the Final 5 are when they go to North Carolina and they host Clemson. And I think probably if I told you a month ago that they were going to be playing at Carolina and hosting Clemson, you would say, wow, that looks really tough. And it looks a little bit less challenging now than it did then. But I still don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for Virginia to get through the Carolina game and the Clemson game without I don't think they're just going to be able to cruise through those games or coast, because going to Carolina is tough no matter what. Clemson still, I think, is a talented team, and they certainly bounced back last night, broke their 3-game losing streak by beating Florida State by about 40. So they've got some life left in them. They're not dead yet. That's not going to be easy for Virginia. And as we saw last night, where they just barely escape against Louisville, anything can happen. We're not counting chickens at all when it comes to Pitt, and I'm not going to count chickens with Virginia either. Virginia's a really good team. I know Pitt beat them earlier this season, but I don't necessarily know if I'm going to put them on the court for 10 games. I don't know if either team comes out with better than a 5-5 record. That's a very good team. It wouldn't surprise me if Pitt ends up facing them in the ACC tournament or something and loses. They're good. But there's still going to be a challenge, and anybody can lose to anybody in this league within reason. I would say that most people probably won't lose to Louisville, but then Virginia almost did last night. I would say most people probably won't lose to Georgia Tech, but then Virginia Tech did last night. And how about that? 7-point win, a 77-70 win for Georgia Tech over Virginia Tech, the game in Atlanta. But Virginia Tech, who I think people have talked about heading into this Saturday game where Pitt is going to Blacksburg. People have talked about Virginia Tech being, wow, they're one of the sneaky teams in the ACC. They're really dangerous. You got to watch out for them. That's a really tricky game down there. That's a dangerous game for Pitt down there. And I think it is, but let's not make Virginia Tech out to be more. Let's not make them out to be more than they actually are. They're okay, but they're also 5-10 in ACC play. At a certain point, you don't get to keep being the sneaky team that's better than its record when your record is 5-10, right? But again, this conference is looking up at Pitt. And the pressure's on teams like Virginia and Miami not to have a slip up, because Pitt is the team that controls its own destiny for that number 1 seed in the ACC tournament, which I think I'll probably, that'll just be who I call the ACC regular season champion, is whoever gets that number 1 seed. Pitt, I talked about Virginia's schedule going forward. Pitt's got Virginia Tech this Saturday, as we know. Then they get the 2 final home games next week, Georgia Tech and Syracuse. And then they close the season the following week at Notre Dame and at Miami. And it's quite a stretch. I mean, that Syracuse game next Saturday is going to be wild. The Peterson Event Center is going to be crazy. I don't think there's any question about that. But I mean, you start with this Virginia Tech game, and it's likely to be challenging. You know what I mean? I think it's likely to be a challenging game, but it's also a game Pitt should win. Georgia Tech next Tuesday night is a game they should win. Syracuse on Saturday in the home finale, that's a game they should win. Going to Notre Dame for like Mike Bray's final game or whatever it is, it's a game they should win. And really, the Miami game is the only one I'm not going to sit here and say that's a game they should win, because they should win those 4. They should go into Miami on a 10-game winning streak, sitting at, what would they be at that point? 16-3 in the ACC, having either clinched the number 1 seed in the conference, possibly clinched the regular season championship, or very close to doing it. And that would be, I mean, like what a wild one that would be if that actually plays out that way. And I don't know if it will. Like I say, I mean, this conference is close this year. Even the bad teams can sneak up on teams and surprise teams. But I think Pitt has, you now have 26 total games of evidence, but really the last 22 games of sample size that this Pitt team is pretty good. And the thing I keep coming back to, which I've talked about a lot, and you're probably sick of hearing me say it, is they've shown that they can win a lot of different types of games. Blowout games, last possession games, grinder games like that Florida State win, games where, they fall behind against an inferior opponent and end up coming back to blow them out like they did on Tuesday night against Boston College. They've won in a lot of different ways. They have a lot of different scoring options, and they have a developing player at center who is getting more and more dangerous every game. There's a lot to like right now, and there's a reason why the rest of the conference is looking up at Pitt. There's a reason why everyone else is chasing the Panthers. All right, we have one more Morning Pitt this week. That'll be tomorrow. We'll talk about Virginia Tech. We'll talk about everything else that happened this week, some thoughts I have on Federico and Nelly Cummings, whatever else I decide to talk about for tomorrow's Morning Pitt. We always look forward to it. Of course, we'll have a 3-2-1 column on Panther-Lair.com. That's 3 things we know, 2 questions we have, and 1 prediction. You can always look for that. That's a Friday favorite at Panther-Lair.com. Later today, we'll have our podcast from last night from our live stream. You can check that out. Our basketball analyst, Steven Gertz, has his likes and dislikes from the win over Boston College. We'll have more photos from that game, more coverage. I wrote a little article about Nelly Cummings. We got a lot of stuff. We got a lot of content, football, basketball, and recruiting at Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you check it out, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you this morning. Hope your week has been good so far. We're already to Thursday, which is pretty much the end of the week. So we're getting there. We're getting there. But hope your week has been good so far. Hope you have a good Thursday. Thanks again for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. And we will talk to you tomorrow morning for the Friday edition of the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.